I may add a word, Mr. Chairman. Oh,
Sure.
Mr. Chow.
Mr. Chow, followed by Ms. Baker.
Thank you very much. Yes, the drones are coming, and I think the challenge is for us, again, to seek that balance between innovation and privacy. As mentioned, drones will bring a lot of opportunities to all of us. In fact, I could cite a number of examples, crop dusting, for example, news gathering, and firefighting and the like. But on the other hand, they also present a challenge as far as privacy is concerned. I just had a bill actually last year that was signed into law that would enhance and modernize the definition of California law to not only to require drones, not only to basically limited to drones, but also to all devices that are being used to capture the image or a video recording of somebody who has a reasonable expectation of privacy. Now, having said that, I think the FAA has just recently come out with some preliminary regulations for public comments, and I think most of them deal with the operational aspect of it. For example, has to be under 55 pounds, and has to be within the sight of vision and the like. But I don't think they deal very much with privacy issue. I think most of them deal with the operational and safety issues. But when it comes to privacy, I think we still need to fill that void. So there's a lot of challenges as we go on to looking at drones. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
I was just noting the way the question was asked, and that it said what we're going to do about the drone problem. And I think we need to be mindful as we are engaging in this discussion and identifying what that problem is in different settings. So certainly with respect to our own backyards and wanting to have some privacy expectations in our own homes and our own backyards, that's a different privacy problem than, say, law enforcement, which is looking to make sure it has technology to keep us safe. And separating the technology they use from the tactics that they use. So I think it's important that the problem is problems, and it depends on the different constituencies that we have. We should be listening to what our own community constituents say, but we just have to be a little bit more nuanced than that and realize that it depends on the setting. The problem is different, which means we probably need to have different solutions, and to Mr. Wilkes' point, possibly more guidelines instead of specific mandates.
Great. So I'll try to address that as well. So, first I guess we have to define a drone because it's a bit of a scary term, but, a drone is essentially a device that can be operated without a human pilot to monitor some aspect of life beneath it. You can think of it as a flying camera, but of course there are drones that have additional devices on them, infrared devices and things like that. There's a long tradition in Anglo-American jurisprudence that there's no privacy from the air, right? If the police happen to be flying over, a city and they notice that one of the citizens is growing marijuana, well, that's something that they notice, and perhaps they can then go down and shut that person down. But of course, the thing that had limited surveillance in the past and really created this concept of no privacy from the air were certain inherent limitations, and those limitations were that you needed a human pilot to fly a helicopter or an airplane, and that helicopter or airplane had fuel, and so you were really limited to surveillance based on the human infirmities of needing sleep and needing to land and needing to come back and get fuel. With a lot of drones, of course, that is not a problem. So we have the mechanisms with these drones for ubiquitous surveillance of the American public, and that is a significant problem. Another problem, of course, with drones is that they're not necessarily regulated as heavily as a passenger aircraft. Passenger aircraft fatalities are very rare. They're actually safer than cars. But somebody driving a drone, it might be a non-commercial pilot. That drone can crash. That drone can cause some pretty serious injuries for people on the ground. The FAA steps in and stops states from regulating anything that is above 400 feet. So the question is, could the state of California, this committee, perhaps regulate things beneath 400 feet? I think the answer is yes. But of course, you do have the issue that as cameras get more powerful and as drones get smaller, people might not even know that there is a drone above them. If something can hover at 400 feet that is the size of a bumblebee, and record your every move beneath it, would the FAA even know it's there? Would the public even know it's there? How does the public have a remedy to know to take that drone down without pulling out a shotgun and shooting into the air? So I think that there are a lot of issues that surround this. It's very, very complicated. It is clear that something needs to be done. My prediction of where the law will go eventually is that drones will have to have some sort of unique serial number. And the federal government will probably at some point require every operator of a drone to have some sort of unique identifier, so that if something bad does happen, if that drone crashes, if somebody takes pictures of somebody and sells them to a tabloid or something like that against their will, or if somebody violates something above schools or what have you, that there's a way to hold that operator accountable. And that's my survey of the law, and that's where I think it should go. Okay, we have a next question, and this has to do with Social Security numbers, and it is, your Social Security number is a critical component in identity theft, yet its use as a unique identifier is endemic and far beyond the finance world. Would the committee consider sponsoring a bill forbidding the use of a Social Security number for anything other than establishing a line of credit? So I imagine that this means forbidding use of a Social Security number for employment, healthcare, all sorts of things. What do people think of that? Oh boy, does the chair get the chair gets all the questions that no one wants to answer? It's intriguing. It's intriguing. I mean, I guess the question is, should we be using one number to establish credit, and for things that are financial, and should we be perhaps using another number for other things? Would that reduce the amount of hacks, or perhaps would people then just go to hacking that number we use for healthcare and things like that? So, I mean, it's definitely an intriguing idea, and I think creative solutions like that are some of the things we could think of. All right. So we have a question from E.S. Rush, and this questioner asks, I am concerned about the safety of medical and financial information at health insurance companies, particularly in light of recent breaches. Will this committee be thinking of taking action on this issue? Does anyone want to weigh in on data breaches in terms of healthcare? Going once, going twice. Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, let me attempt that. I think for many of us, our health data is something that we really think is pretty sacred. That it's between ourselves and our physician, our caretaker, and it is an area that I think is one that we really want to protect. Part of what we will do, I think, as a committee will be to look at legislation that comes to us. But we may also, through that process, if we don't get something that specifically addresses the issue of healthcare data and potential data breaches, that there may be some things that we will consider later in the year as a committee to think about. I think from my perspective, one of the beauties of the design of this committee is that we'll have the opportunity to really, in a very comprehensive way, in a single committee, begin to explore these very important issues. So I think that may be an area that we will get into. We'll see whether legislation comes to us with that topic, and if not, it may be an area that we'll explore in an informational hearing at some point.
Wonderful. All right, so I will note that it is almost 2:15, which is the portion that we allotted for the online Reddit portion of this hearing. I want to give a chance to the 50 or so people who did trek to Sacramento to ask questions the old-fashioned way in person, to also weigh in, because this is a public hearing, and all of you in the audience are welcome to weigh in as well. We're going to take one more question from the Reddit feed, and this one has to do with police license plate scanners, another very hot-button issue. This comes from someone named Vintage Vino 4, and this person asks, though useful for solving some crimes, such as stolen vehicles, stored data from these police license plate scanners can be used to track an individual's movements and potentially harass individuals if they are found to be at uncompromising locations, like casinos and so forth. I guess there's a question there. What does this committee think about license plate scanners?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Cooper.
I think license plate LPR readers are a great tool. For instance, when we host things at this California State Fair, I have officers from the 290 unit, which is our sexual offender unit, that are out there and scan the license plate. Those offenders come in, they're contacted, made sure they're in compliance. And also, we don't want them out there harassing our kids. That's been seen on a number of occasions. At a lot of events, they do that, where you have children's events. They'll go out and use the LPR readers. And unfortunately, when you have sex offenders, they do like preying on small children. They do show up at these type of events. So there's a useful tool for it, and also in locating stolen vehicles. So once again, anything is ripe for abuse, but it's a good tool. It just needs to be controlled properly. So it's very effective in law enforcement.
Great. Anybody else? All right.
I would also add, Chair, in certain high crime areas, some agencies have LPRs mounted up on a phone pole so it records license plates. And they've had homicides in these high crime areas. They've been able to identify suspects in those areas. So they aren't everywhere, but in certain neighborhoods, they've been very useful and have helped us solve crimes. So it's one of those things. Technology is a good thing, but with anything, it's ripe for abuse. It's just making sure it's controlled properly.
Well, great. I want to thank everybody again who participated in the online portion of this hearing. This was, in effect, a statewide town hall where you could ask questions for all the members of this newly constituted committee. Keep in mind that the opinions expressed by individual members might not be the way that a bill vote will go in the committee itself. We are a large and diverse committee, and we have not heard any bills yet this year. But I really want to thank everybody for participating. Again, you know, this state of ours is a democracy. We really do benefit when the public weighs in and tells our elected officials how they want them to act, and also asks us questions about our opinions and shares their opinions with us as well. So now we're going to open it to. We will conclude the Reddit portion of this hearing, and we'll open this up to the traditional portion of this hearing, which is public comment, and that is for the individuals in the audience who wish to ask questions or just state comments. So please form a line, and we'll open it up to you.
I already live in Sacramento.
Yes, sir.
Larry Bell. I applaud you for forming this committee. It's absolutely essential. And I think what you're going to find in progressing that many of the subject areas are going to overlap with other committees, especially in the area of health care. Now, I'm mostly concerned with the technology in invasive broadcasts into private property, libraries, and classrooms in Del Paso Heights. This is a situation that is being addressed nationally, but there is certainly insufficient attention paid to California. I know that President Obama is working on some legislation whereby if there's a significant data breach that involves compromising personal information, that would be reported to the federal government. Here we have a situation where much of the technology is in fact innovated in Silicon Valley, and you have converging technologies going on simultaneously. Certainly this is a problem for state government. My experience is that the state government tends to seemingly have the opinion that it's for private industry. But it is beyond that. The technology is growing very rapidly, and technologies are inventing other technologies. There is a need for regulation below 400 feet, and that is something that must be addressed by the Privacy Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has a public comment, a question? Wow. You have an online hearing, and it really encourages people to do everything online. Usually the lines for these type of hearings is very long. Is there anybody who wishes to address what the gentleman from Sacramento said? No takers? All right. We have one more person coming up to the microphone.
Good afternoon. I'm not here to address the gentleman's comments. I am, however, here to introduce myself and avail my expertise and my staff to you as a committee. My name is Pam Lane. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Health Information Exchange in California, and I'm also the Director of the California Office of Health Information Integrity, responsible for HIPAA compliance across state departments. So as the committee seeks expertise relative to health information privacy, please don't hesitate to call upon my cadre of experts in this area. We have worked very successfully with the legislature in the past, balancing the need for information, whether it's de-identified information or whether it's specific patient information, balancing that with the patient's right to privacy in this new technology arena. So please call upon us if you need us.
Thank you very much. It's always nice to see somebody here with that type of expertise. Other questions, comments? There's 50 people in the audience and nobody wants to ask a question. You just like here to listen. Okay. Well, does anybody else on the committee want to give some closing remarks? We have another 15 minutes or so budgeted for this hearing, or 10 minutes budgeted. Mr. Cooper, you can be the first to give some closing remarks.
Sure. It's tough. I ran the High-Tech Crimes Task Force for the Central Valley for 3 years, from 2008 to 2011, and there are 5 task forces in the state, and the funding by the state has been cut. That's really the hard part. And with these breaches we've seen, no matter what system you put in place, someone will develop a way to defeat it. And that's really the hard part that we're dealing with here. And what's more troubling with law enforcement, they aren't investigating these cases. If someone steals your identity and they go out and charge money on your credit card or whatever, we're not going to investigate it. We don't have the resources to investigate that. So basically, you've seen drug dealers or bank robbers, why commit those crimes? When this crime is a white-collar crime, my chances of getting caught are dramatically reduced. So we've seen a whole wave of folks go towards that area in that arena. That's what it's about now. Why commit those other crimes? And that's the bottom line that a lot of folks don't realize these days. And we had one individual, like I said, information is power, information is king, that worked for a local health care organization, actually a statewide health care organization, and seized or stole 30,000 subscribers' information. Bought a dog, bought a house, was about to get plastic surgery, was at the surgeon's office when she got caught. So it's just simple things like that where we see folks that are just going to do that these days. So technology works to an extent, and we've got to put more resources toward that. But for most of these breaches, the minor breaches, I mean the major corporations, the state and federal agencies investigate that. But most local breaches, no one investigates because law enforcement does not have the resources. But you do have in place task forces in California that, if properly funded, could investigate and would investigate some of these breaches. And hopefully through this committee and your chairmanship, Mr. Gatto, we can help rectify that.
Yeah, and for those of you saying, boy, identity theft for plastic surgery, what's the world coming to? Yeah, we share that sentiment. I will build on that. I think that Mr. Cooper's comments on that were very, very well thought out and very accurate. You know, there's a saying up here that personal experiences don't always make the best law, and I think that's accurate. I think, you know, all of us have different experiences, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be applied to the whole state. But you know, a number of years ago, I had my wallet stolen, and somebody opened up a checking account, you know, under my name, and I went to complete a police report. And they said, well, how much has been stolen from you? I said, well, nothing. And they said, well, then there's no victim. There's no crime has occurred because there's no victim. And of course, I was thinking, well, what about my name? What about my credit? What about, you know, I'm sure the bank has an opinion on whether they were a victim. And that really does highlight the need for additional resources and education on these issues because, you know, they are not victimless crimes. We all you know, suffer if our identity, of course, is stolen, and if the system has so many costs built into it because of rampant identity theft that things cost more. So then, of course, we all do suffer. Closing comments. More closing comments from anybody. Mr. DeBobney.
Well, I'll start off by thanking my colleague and the chairman of this committee for holding this. This was actually very informative, and I have learned quite a bit more about what our constituents and many of the consumers of the products that have been at risk lately are feeling about these issues. As chair of the Banking and Finance Committee, I look forward to working with this committee closely to make sure that we're looking at financial institutions. I know I've already had several meetings with a number of financial institutions in the state, and I'm very excited about the technology that they're innovating on a daily basis to keep consumers' private information private, to make sure that their financial information is kept in the right hands. I'm very excited about a possible tour of Visa soon, where we're going to be looking at smart chip technology. And I really appreciate the time today to work on these issues. And I just want to thank the chairman and thank all the people that had the time to write in.
Thank you. Mr. Dolly.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the chairman, too. I'm really excited about the opportunity to sit on this committee. You know, I think more than anything, we are going to have an opportunity to lead the way here in California. You know, you think about terrorists and the ability, what they could do with a drone to somebody or to a group of people and not even be even close to where the incident may happen. And where we see identity theft and we see information that is collected without people really realizing what is being collected. I think we have a great opportunity as a committee and to be leaders in this area in California. So I'm excited to be on this committee. I look forward to working with all the members on this committee and the folks that develop this technologies too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chang.
I also want to thank the chair for coming up with such an innovative way to engage the public. You know, what I typically like to do is just listen for the most part because I don't like unintended consequences. So I study all issues. But I'm very excited about this committee. I believe it is a very delicate balance between protecting citizen privacy while ensuring that we continue to foster creative innovation. And knowing every single person on this committee, every single one of us are very thoughtful, and I think it's going to be an exciting year. The nation is going to be watching this committee, and we, just like what Assemblymember Dolly had said, you know, I believe we will be paving the way for the nation. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Any other closing comments or comments from members of the audience? All right, then. I'm sorry, we do have one more. Yes, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on one of the comments that was made regarding private rights of action, and specifically in the data breach space, and then even particularly within the healthcare space. I would just love to get more of the members' thoughts as to where you might go in terms of legislating that issue this year, what types of liability carve-outs you might consider, if any. I don't know if you're prepared to get that specific, but I'd love to hear any comments you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The most substantial question perhaps from the audience is last. Gosh, we could have an entire hearing, I'm sure, on that, and I don't know if there's anybody who wants to comment on that. You know, I can just say generally we are wrestling with those issues. Of course, we have to strike the right balance, you know, we have read a lot of the reports from think tanks and from people who make it their job to consider the policy considerations of these laws, and there are different schools of thought. You know, some say that you need to provide a carrot, and some say that you need to provide a stick. And so you alluded to the idea of a you know, perhaps a safe harbor or a carve out from liability if companies do good practices. But then, of course, the implication of that is what is the way to punish the companies that have bad practices. So those are the issues that we're wrestling with, and we'll try to get it right. And we look forward to you and everybody out there, you know, giving us their input on these ideas as we have specific bill proposals before us. Thank you. And with that, everybody, this committee is adjourned.